The Global Forest Coalition is a coalition of indigenous peoples, organizations and NGOs, but I'm very obviously not indigenous myself. So I'm not going to, call any names, but I would like to emphasize, though, that it's very often overlooked that Article 18 of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples talks about self-selection. It talks about legitimate representatives, and indeed I think there has not been enough taken care of appropriate self-selection processes. Of course, it's always very hard for groups from all over the world to work together. The big Indigenous Peoples forums, the Indigenous People Forum on Biodiversity and the Indigenous Peoples Forum on Climate Change, have been set up to try to overcome that and try to work together around the process so that you can have a legitimate self-representation and a legitimate standing. I think it's been indeed very annoying how quite some consultation processes actually have been squarely ignoring this indigenous forum. You just cannot have that. I mean, if other indigenous peoples organizations are doing, and sometimes great work in terms of analysis and, providing all the background, that is great, but they should feel obliged to go to the indigenous forum, feed that work into the Indigenous Forum, try to seek a consensus with their colleagues in the Indigenous Forum, and then select a proper representative that could then bring that analysis to a global consultation process. And insist in any consultation process they're being invited for, whether it's a World Bank, your stakeholders forum in which there's supposed to be a forest-dependent people's representative, and once again I should emphasize the word representative, so not just someone who's a forest-dependent people, but a representative of forest-dependent peoples, or it's a consultation, or it's an international meeting, that they will always try to go back to their structures and try to have a self-selection processes. And we will probably see some of the same people going then to the same meeting, but with much clearer mandate that's legitimate and that's in line with the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples itself.